Welcome Bitcoin friends, Bitcoin Mamo. Today we're going to look at the Bitcoin chart, do some TA. We'll go over some of the things that we looked at yesterday in the video. We'll look at the long-term and short-term time frames. We'll also look at the market Cypher indicator. If that sounds interesting, stay tuned and let's get into the charts. In yesterday's video we were looking at this channel here that Bitcoin was bouncing between, and we did notice this head and shoulders pattern here. We just had it drawn out, and I made that video right at this candle here. We had just started to break below and we came back into the pattern here, and I'll just play what happened. I think you all know what happened, and we had this massive drop. So the measured move from this head and shoulders was all the way down to 48.4 approximately, and we did drop a bit lower here. We did go to about 46,000 even, and then we did have this big bounce back up into the 50,000 zone. And I just have these two trend lines drawn here in the yellow and the green. We can see one connecting the bottoms here and one connecting this higher bottom here and this pullback here, and we can see currently we are getting support on this green line. We did wick below and we have come back up above it. It's just a line to watch to see if these come into play, if it will act as support. So we did see this pattern and we were able to predict this move. And they say, show me the charts, I will tell you the news. And with that Elon tweet, it did cause this dump. But we did meet this target off this measured move. And currently we are zigzagging our way down here, with lower highs and lower lows at the moment. And I did find a similar pattern here after a big drop we had here back in April, and we had this big wick down. We came back up and we did a similar pattern here, forming these M's with lower highs and lower lows between these points. So I did just copy this pattern here and just looking at it as a fractal and putting it over the current pattern, and what we can see is it does line up quite similar here with this big drop down and coming back up, forming these M's here, and then having this other drop here forming a lower low, and currently we are going back up similar to this pattern, and this pattern did end up having another drop down. So if this fractal were to play out maybe around 44,000 level, but this is scaled, we can see this isn't the exact size of the drop. But it's just interesting to see a similar pattern after a big drop like this, after we did have a big wick also and came back up into this middle range. And I also looked at this other fractal here where after this big drop, and we did similar M pattern here where we did drop lower before going higher. And if we just applied that one to the current pattern, we can see after this big drop we did do this M pattern and we are currently going higher. So we could do something similar like this also, and then have this one more drop down to make a lower low just to catch the bears out before having a big run up and going higher. So just a few possibilities. If we do get a bounce here, I would be watching this 4-hour EMA ribbon. Quite often we do get rejected on the first touch back up. Currently it's at 53,000. We did just open a new 4-hour candle, but this is coming down quite quickly and it'll probably start leveling out here. If we do go up here, we'll be watching that for resistance. And just looking at the volume profile here, we can see that we did have this support here with volume traded at this price range, and this has acted as support so far. And if we were to get above this support, there isn't much resistance here on the volume profile. We could shoot all the way back to 54,000 before coming into this resistance. We can see on the weekly EMA ribbon here, we did come down into it and it has acted as support so far. This is the first time we've tested it since all the way back in October. And if we look back in the previous bull market here in 2017, we can see that these pullbacks did come into this ribbon several times, and they did act as support. We can see on this pullback here, upon the next weekly opening, we did have this big rise back up. On this previous pullback here, we did just touch it and close the week a lot higher above the ribbon, went sideways and then carried on higher. So a similar thing might happen on this pullback, and we'll just have to watch how the weekly closes. In the previous video we did talk about these wedge patterns. So we had two falling wedges, one rising wedge, and this one did make a similar pattern, but obviously the opposite to this one because it is a rising wedge, and we did break down from it. But I was looking at the possibility that we may be forming a larger wedge here, and if we join these two tops here and then join these bottoms together, then maybe we are forming this giant falling wedge here, in which case we've had 2 touch points on the top and we have 3 on the bottom. And looking at those previous patterns here, what we could see is, we'll just use this one, we had 2 touch points at the top and 3 at the bottom, and then we came back up and came back down to test the bottom trend line. We didn't touch it, and then we broke the wedge and took off higher. We also saw a similar thing with this pattern, 3 touch points down the bottom, 2 on the top, and then we came back down, didn't come down to the bottom trend line, we broke the wedge and we took off higher. So if this is a bigger falling wedge pattern, and I know it looks a bit weird because it is quite large, you can see with these 3 touch points and 2 on the top, perhaps we're going to go sideways for a bit here and come back down but not touch this trend line, and then come back up to break this upper trend line and carry on higher. So just something to watch there. And on the CME Bitcoin futures chart here, we can see we drew this circle here in yesterday's video, and we said there's some points of confluence here. We did have this 0.5 fib level, just drawing it from the bottom here to the top, and we also had this blue trend line here connecting the top and the bottom here, and also the bottom there. Currently the body is above this trend line, and we also had this white line here representing the 21-week exponential moving average. And if we just pull that up here, we can see that it is around this area, around 56,950. And I said be looking to get into a long in this area because we did have these 3 points of confluence. We did pretty much come down exactly to this 21-week exponential moving average and got this bounce so far. And just looking at the RSI and Stochastic RSI, we said we were in this channel and would be looking to come back to this trend line here. We are quite close at the moment. Perhaps we were at the bottom of this trend line when we were at the bottom here, but we have wicked back up. And RSI takes its measurements from the bodies of the candle, so perhaps tomorrow we will be at this line. And the Stochastic RSI will also come down quite a bit by tomorrow. And I think if we can get a bounce off this trend line and also the stochastic cools off, we could see a bounce from this level. We also talked about these Bollinger Bands on the weekly in yesterday's video, and I said look to come back to this yellow line here, the midline of the Bollinger Bands, and we just said in the previous bull market this was a level that we came back to on the 2 major pullbacks after the previous all-time high. And looking at the RSI, we said we were zigzagging down in this channel, and I was looking for us to come back to this red line. And currently we are very close to this red line, and this red line acted as support as we said in the previous bull market here. And again, we'll have to wait for that weekly to close. So if we can get a bounce off this red line, I do think we'll start going higher again and carry on the bull market. And I think it's also interesting here to look at the 2-week chart, and this candle still does have the rest of this week and next week before it closes, but it looks like currently we are pretty much lining up with the bodies of these previous candles, and the 2-week chart just shows really well this range that we've been stuck in here between 49,000 and 60,000. So do we have any divergences on the chart at the moment? Well, we might be forming one here on the daily, but we will have to wait to see how it plays out. We might have higher lows here on the daily and form lower lows on the price action. That might take a couple of days to play out, and that would be very bullish if we do get this bullish divergence on the daily. And on the 4-hour chart, currently it looks like we might be forming divergence here. We do have higher lows on the RSI and lower lows on the price. And to confirm this, we would like to see this candle get above the previous candle. These divergences are more powerful when they're spread out a bit more. For example, like this, where we had lower lows on the price and higher lows on the RSI. And we did have this big range in between the 2 points, and we did come up on the RSI and come back down. We could even form something like this at the bottom, where we did have a triple bullish divergence here. We can see lower lows on the bodies of these candles and higher lows on the RSI. We do also have this same divergence present on the 6 hour currently. And again, we have to get above the previous candle to confirm. And just looking at market Cypher, this is on the 2 hour chart. You can see that we did have these green dots down here, which can indicate bottoms. But we also see this money flow here, the green wave's money going in and red wave's money going out. You can see the red wave is still going down, so we will look for it to start to curve and come back up and be more confident when it is in the green. Again, the more longer term time frames are also more reliable with these green dots, but when we zoom to the smaller term time frames, we can look at this money flow and get more of an idea of what's happening on a zoomed in level. And on the 4 hour chart, we can see we did get this green dot, and these ones further down here are more significant than the smaller ones higher up to indicate bottoms. And we did have 2 green dots here, which also can be quite bullish for a bottom. And we look on previous occasions here, we did have 2 green dots here, and the second one did indicate the bottom. So we would like to see this blue wave start coming up now, and we'll take a little bit to come up here, and we also want to see this red money flow start coming back up into the green. So when you have a green dot on the 4 hour, then we look to the higher time frames on the 6 hour, and we've almost got a green dot here. So we'll wait for a green dot on the 6 hour to give more confidence. But we do see this red money flow just dipping down here. We'll need to watch for that to curve around. The 12 hour is more reliable again, especially with these lower green dots. And we can see this one pretty much got the bottom. And we are starting to come down here. This might take a few days to play out before we see a green dot, but that could be a good indication of the bottom. And we can see here the last time we had one before this one was back in January, and it did capture the bottom quite well here. The daily is starting to come down with this blue wave, and as I said with the 12 hour, this might take several days to play out for us to come down. So over the weekend, maybe starting next week, we might be looking for a green dot on the daily. We can see the last one worked quite well, going from around 50,000 to 60,000. So we just have to keep watching the chart, see how this plays out going into the end of the week, and just look for that green dot on the 6 hour, then the 12 hour, and possibly the daily, and just watch that money flow and see if Bitcoin has bottomed out. That 21-week exponential moving average gives me confidence. If we hold that, I think we'll start going back up again. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that quick update on Bitcoin Mamo. See you next time. Bye.